to the Trending Now podcast for a Friday, June the 30th, 2023, the final day of June. And as always, it has been a busy week on Trending Now, which you can catch every Monday to Friday, 7 p.m. here on CHCH, and again at 11:30. As mentioned, a busy week. And that's even considering the fact that we only had 3 shows. Kelly Patello on vacation this week. A well-deserved vacation, I should add. Shout out to Matt Ingram for filling in to start the week. But a lot to get to, and a couple of things that we would have gotten to on yesterday's show and today's show that we're going to touch on today, including some Supreme Court rulings out of the United States. An update to Bill C-18. We talked about that last week on the show on Trending Now. But let's start with a big international story that caught the world's attention this week. And that was the Wagner Group mutiny. Or at least it appeared to be a mutiny, as Wagner mercenary group leader Yevgeny Prigozhin was speaking out for the first time since his one-day mutiny on Monday, saying it was not an attempt to overthrow the Russian government, but rather a protest over how the Russian war in Ukraine has been fought. Now, the mercenary boss saying that he captured the headquarters of Russia's southern military district after leading his forces from the war zone in Ukraine. The column of troops then headed north towards Moscow via the city of Voronezh, marching unopposed for nearly 800 kilometers and triggering a state of emergency in the Russian capital. Meanwhile, President Vladimir Putin going on Russian television, calling it treason, a stab in the back, and a military coup. Now, Prigozhin and the Kremlin then made a deal that allowed the mercenary and his soldiers to go to Belarus and receive amnesty, ending the march. But on Monday, Prigozhin was saying that his plans are for the future, which is fueling uncertainty in the area. Now, the Russian state trying to act like business as usual, releasing a video of the defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, said to be a visit to the war zone in Ukraine. And then Putin took to the airwaves late on Monday night in Moscow, thanking Wagner fighters who had stood down to avoid bloodshed, but accused the organizers of wanting to drown Russia in blood. Now, he said he would honor his promise to allow the mercenaries to go to Belarus, sign up with the Russian army, or go home to their families, all while never even mentioning Prigozhin. Now, on a visit to European NATO countries, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau calling the march on Moscow a Russian issue, saying NATO leaders are concerned.
It is obviously an internal issue for Russia to work through, but we need to stand continuing to be strong in support of Ukraine, in support of the rules-based order.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden also chimed in, saying that Western allies had nothing to do with the march.
They agreed with me that we had to make sure we gave Putin no excuse. Let me emphasize, we gave Putin no excuse to blame this on the West or to blame this on NATO. We made clear that we were not involved.
Now, in news a little bit closer to home, Canada's biggest city has a new mayor, as Olivia Chow became the first woman and first visible minority to lead post-amalgamation Toronto.
Thank you, Toronto! Thank you, everyone. I pledge to you, I will delegate myself to work tirelessly in building a city that's more caring, affordable, and safe, where everyone belongs.
Now, Chow is a former NDP MP, a city councillor, and a Toronto School Board trustee. And she's also the widow of former federal NDP leader Jack Layton. Now, for most of the campaign leading up to the election, Chow was ahead in the polls, even though some of her competitors were getting more support from prominent political faces. Like City Councillor Anna Bailou was endorsed by Toronto's former mayor, John Tory, but that still wasn't enough to win. She came in second with 32%. While former police chief Mark Saunders came in third with 8.5%. Now, Saunders was Doug Ford's top pick, and during the campaign, Ontario's premier was strongly against Olivia Chow. And in an announcement in Burlington last week, he warned against voting for her.
It would be an unmitigated disaster if Olivia Chow got in. Her policies don't work. Matter of fact, Colin, what is her policies? I've heard one policy: I'm raising taxes. If you don't think that puts a chill through people, it really does.
But once Chow won, Ford quickly changed his tone and congratulated her.
During the election, you throw some mud back and forth, but I'll tell you one thing, people expect us to work together, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We'll work together, and we're going to find common ground when we sit down, because she's actually quite a nice person.
We look forward to finding common ground, right? Because I know we both believe in this people of this city. And yes, we both believe in it. We love the city. Well, Mr. Premier, we're ready. Let's work together to get it done.
Now, Chow ran on a platform to have the city build new social housing and invest millions in a program to acquire and preserve affordable units as part of a larger suite of renter protections. And she's also vowed to reverse cuts to transit service and to extend mental health crisis response teams citywide in an effort to reduce 911 wait times and divert calls from police. Her campaign also pledged to expand rent supplements to 1,000 homes and boost the number of 24/7 respite homeless shelters, promises to be funded by an expanded tax on homes purchased for $3 million and above. Now, Toronto's mayoral by-election was triggered after Tory resigned in February, just months into his third term, following his admission of an affair with a staffer. Now, if you've been outside this week, and hopefully you have been, just saying, hopefully you made it outside at least once in the past, 3 days, but at some point, hopefully you've made it outside. You might have noticed the smoke again. And it's because many parts of Canada, including most of Ontario, Quebec, and BC, and some parts of the Northwest Territories, have been under a special air quality alert again. Now, the smoke is a result of the forest fires burning in eastern and western Canada, and an atmospheric monitoring service in the EU says the fires have released record high levels of carbon emissions. Now, the smoke from the fires is on the move through other parts of Canada, causing poor air quality, but it's not just in Canada. The smoke has traveled across the border to parts of the U.S. where several cities have been under air quality warnings as well. And for part of the day, on Wednesday, Chicago's air quality was considered the worst in the world. And some other cities like Detroit were in the hazardous range, and people were warned to stay indoors and reduce activity levels. Now, Environment Canada has said that smoky conditions are expected to continue today, being Friday, and possibly into Saturday for some areas. The Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre, meanwhile, says that there are 499 active fires burning across the country as of yesterday afternoon, with about 230 of them, almost half, out of control. It says 106 of the active forest fires are in Quebec and 67 are in Ontario. Now, Environment Canada says that people with lung or heart disease, older adults, and children are among those at higher risk of suffering adverse health effects because of the wildfire smoke. Meanwhile, some news from Thursday, and an update to a story we had on Trending Now last week. After Meta said, or Facebook said, that they were going to stop publishing Canadian news, well, Google said yesterday that it will remove Canadian news from its platforms and end existing deals with local publishers because of the Liberal government's Online News Act, which forces digital giants to pay media outlets for content they share or otherwise repurpose. Now, the tech giant plans to remove news links from its search engine, Google News, and Google Discover for only Canadian publishers and readers. Canadian users will still be able to search for news content from international outlets such as BBC, New York Times, and Fox News. The company said it will also end Google News Showcase in Canada, which was a product it uses to license news from over 150 local publishers, and that those existing deals will stay in place until the change happens later this year. Now, Kent Walker is the president of global affairs for Google, and its parent company Alphabet said in an interview with the Canadian press, once the law takes effect, we wouldn't anticipate continuing the agreement. Now, Google did not exactly say when the changes will happen, but it will be before the law comes into force. And the law passed last week and is expected to come into effect by the end of the year. Now, Walker said he wrote a letter to Canadian Heritage Minister Pablo Rodriguez early Thursday morning to inform him and his team of the decision. Meanwhile, Meta, Facebook, announced last week that it'll also be removing news in Canada from its Facebook and Instagram platforms before the law is in force. Now, it's already running a test to block news for up to 5% of its Canadian users. That's not all, as Meta is also ending existing deals with local publishers, including the contract for a fellowship program that supports the hiring of a limited number of emerging journalists at newswire service, the Canadian Press. The Online News Act requires both companies to enter into agreements with news publishers to pay them for news content that appears on their sites if it helps them generate money. Now, the act aims to create new government oversight for digital giants who dominate the online advertising market. Now, for more on this story, very pleased to be joined by the news director here at CHCH. It is Greg O'Brien. And Greg, just give us a little bit the cliff notes of Bill C-18.
It's real simple. What it does is it forces the digital tech giants who are gathering up most of the digital advertising revenue in Canada, which is $9.6 billion a year market, to come to the table and negotiate with news organizations that cause a lot of that digital advertising to go to theirs.
So this, the number we've been seeing is 80% is going to Meta and Alphabet. 85%.
Goes to Meta and Google, yeah.
So this would have been, when you say digital advertising revenue, this would have been revenue that businesses would have been spending on commercials, airtime, but now in this digital media landscape, it seems to be pushed online.
Yeah, TV advertising used to be the king. Now it's digital. TV advertising is still big. Mm-hmm. Radio advertising still big. Even billboard advertising still big. But it's now digital advertising is where it is. And Meta and Google get 85% of it, which is a duopoly by anybody's definition. Now,
Google released a statement yesterday, and they said, last year alone, we linked to Canadian news publications more than 3.6 billion times. And they make a point of saying here, at no charge, helping publishers make money through ads and new subscriptions. This referral traffic from links has been valued at $250 million Canadian annually. Based on the numbers you just said, there seems to be some sort of discrepancy there.
I don't know Google's numbers. They've never released what their algorithm is, how they calculate that. But I'm not going to deny that Google traffic is not good for us. It's great for us. You know, we get a lot of referrals through Google and through Facebook. People reading stuff, watching stuff back on CHCH.com. It is a good thing, but it's a one-way street. And it's a very shallow way for them to define value, which is outbound clicks from them back to us. When people are on YouTube, which is a big Google platform, they spend minutes, hours there engaged in commenting on what they see with CHCH News, Morning Live, and Trending Now. And what those big platforms do is they take that attention that consumers give them, consumers of our news, and then they sell that attention to advertisers, even though we're causing a lot of that engagement.
Now, how can Google and Meta go to the consumer and say, this is better for you? They can't, can they?
No, it's not. And they've announced that. And that's why they're making so much noise. They know it's bad for their users. They know it's bad for journalism. They just don't want to pay, or they just don't want to be forced to pay, because there's a difference between the two. Like, Facebook is acting a little bit more crabby about it. Google, on the other hand, I've actually heard their people say that they would pay for journalism, but they don't want to do it in the way C-18 contemplates.
Yeah. So this bill is based on a law in Australia. It was modeled after a law in Australia that was introduced in 2021, and that pushed Google and Meta to pay content fees to Australian news publications. What difference? What did we learn from this Australian bill? What differences do we see in this Canadian version, C18?
So the Canadian bill is a bit more prescriptive, where they've said to the big tech companies that you have to negotiate with individual news corporations, which can be onerous if you're talking, big corporations like Bell, down through to us, and then down through through news organizations that may only have 2 full-time employees. That's a lot of people to negotiate with. So Google has said they would pay into one fund, and then we would all apply to the fund and pull money out of there due to their domination in digital advertising. Now, the Australian bill is kind of interesting because they passed a law. Facebook reacted, pulled all the news out of everyone, from everyone down there, but they overreacted and they didn't do it right, and they had to reestablish it. But actually, the law has not been applied to Facebook or to Meta or to Google. But it forced those 2 platforms to negotiate with news organizations down there, which are benefiting now with over $200 million annually of new funding.
Now, when we see all these stories in the news lately, when we talk about all these stories, I mean, Bell layoffs, we have the Toronto Star in negotiations with the National Post, their parent companies possibly merging. We just see where the business is right now. Are these 2 linked? I mean, is this linked, this Meta Google, or this Meta and Google situation, with the diminishing industry as we see it right now?
It's definitely linked, and it's definitely harder on the newspaper industry than it is on us right now, because at CHCH we do have TV news advertising, which is still a good business. We still have lots and lots of people watching us on TV and streamed online. It's a little bit harder for newspapers because they've lost a ton of their advertising, display advertising, but one of the bigger things people don't talk about is all of the classified advertising they lost. For some newspapers, that was 30-40% of their revenue.
Wow.
And now it's down to very, very little. No one's selling their car through classified ad. They're still doing obituaries and things like that because people like to see those printed, but everyone's going to Facebook Marketplace or Kijiji or something if they want to sell their couch or their car.
Garage sale listings. Yeah, I can remember, my mom pulling out the paper and circling the, my dad still does, by the way. He still gets all his garage sales through the newspaper. So.
Yeah. So like you said, it is all linked.
Yeah. I appreciate you trying to make sense, but you had said, and there's a great commentary on CHCH.com, you believe that this is not the end of the story here. This isn't Google saying we're pulling it. This isn't Meta. There's going to be more to this as the law gets enacted.
There always is. So when a government passes a law, no matter what it is, whether it's about environment or media or mining, they always pass a law that's a big picture focus, where this is the government's priorities. This is what we want you to do. And then they always pass it off to a regulator. So in this case, it's the CRTC to come up with the finer point details. So there's going to be a regulatory process that's going to take anywhere from 6 months to a year. The CRTC says 6 months. It's usually longer, so probably a year, where they'll come up with a formula on how this is going to be applied. So at that point, CHCH will make a case, Bell Media will make a case, Google and Facebook will make their cases, along with Twitter and whoever else wants to show up and make their case. The Commission will consider all of that and come up with a way to apply the law in a way that's fair for everyone. So right now, everyone's, the government is saying, no, we're not going to be bullied by these big tech companies. And the tech companies are saying, to hell with you guys, we're going to pull all the links. It's just grandstanding posturing. There will be negotiations. Now, and Google has even said they're not going to act until the regulatory process is done. No matter what the headline said yesterday, they're not going to act till the regulatory process is done. Facebook, on the other hand, they may act because they've been a little grumpier about it.
Well, and they are withholding Canadian news from about 5% of their Canadian audiences, which is what we've heard. They announced that last week. I know you were on the show with Kelly talking about that.
Yeah. So they've announced that they're doing tests on how to do it to hold news back. Which is not cool if you're a user.
Yeah.
You want to be able to share things the way you shared before. And it doesn't matter if you're a company or an individual. And this is where I'm going to go off on Facebook a little bit. I don't know if you if you're going to ask me this already, but I'm already there. We had a problem with Facebook earlier this week, where there are 11 fake CHCH Facebook pages out there. One of them, or at least one of them, was direct messaging our viewers, our listeners, with scams. A scam link that would say, click here and you'll win a prize. All you have to do is give us your credit card information. So should people who use the internet know that's a scam already? Perhaps. But at least 2 of our viewers were caught up in that, and they reported it to us.
Wow.
We reported that back to Facebook. We said, can you take off these fake pages who are stealing our branding? Yeah. And we got an automated response back that says, we've looked into it, and these fake pages, these fraudsters do not violate our community guidelines.
Wow.
So that's the part that frustrates me most about social media, is that there's so much stuff like that going on and so much toxicity at the same time. However, we still want to reach as many citizens, viewers in our area as we can with our great local journalism. So we still use those platforms because we know it's an effective way to reach them.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really an alternative other than having our viewers watch it on TV. We've talked about this, though, and I saw CBC is pushing for this. Newsletters.
Yeah.
You believe that is probably going to be a way for us to reach our consumers in a more direct way without having to go through that.
Exactly. We do a daily news newsletter now. It comes out at 9 o'clock every morning. We will be expanding those as well with our other brands. There'll be a morning live newsletter soon. There'll be an evening news newsletter soon, because then you can reach into people's emails, and you can, and they can click or not on the stories that interest them. And it's the one digital platform that almost everybody has. Everybody has an email, whether you're 10 years old or 110 years old. Virtually everybody has an email. So that is a really great place to reach out in a non-traditional way for a broadcaster to our viewers and help inform them in their inbox.
Speaking of non-traditional ways, I know you are a longtime listener of this podcast.
Absolutely. The only episode I missed is when I was on holidays.
Well, I appreciate you coming on today and helping explain C18. And by the sounds of it, it's not going away anytime soon, so we'll have to have you back real soon.
Happy to come back, Louie. You're doing a great job.
Oh, appreciate that. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks.
My thanks to Greg O'Brien, the news director here at CHCH, for helping us try to make sense of Bill C-18. And again, as you mentioned, that's not going away. This is part of a negotiation, so we'll keep our eye on that story here for you on Trending Now. Now, before we go, it's been a busy couple of days when it comes to the U.S. Supreme Court, or the Supreme Court of the United States, I should say, SCOTUS. They've made They've been very busy making a couple of controversial rulings, and it comes 1 year after overturning Roe v. Wade. The U.S. Supreme Court made another landmark decision on Thursday as the High Court gutted affirmative action in college admissions. Now, colleges can no longer take race into consideration as a specific basis for student admissions due to a ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote the opinion for the conservative majority, saying the admissions program for both Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment and failed to offer measurable objectives to justify the use of race. Meanwhile, the court's 3 liberal justices slammed their 6 conservative colleagues in their dissent, saying, quote, "Deeming race irrelevant in law does not make it so in life." Meanwhile, today, on the final day of Pride Month, just like the NHL jerseys, deciding that, the NHL deciding they're not going to wear their special jerseys and making that announcement during Pride, well, the Supreme Court dealt a blow to advocates of LGBTQ rights. In a ruling today rooted in free speech grounds, justices sided with a Christian business owner in Colorado who refuses to create websites to celebrate same-sex weddings. Now, it was also a 6-3 decision penned by Justice Neil Gorsuch. He wrote, quote, "The First Amendment envisions the United States as a rich and complex place where all persons are free to think and speak as they wish, not as the government demands." Meanwhile, Justice Sonia Sotomayor penned a dissent joined by her liberal colleagues, Justices Elena Kagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson. Sotomayor said the decision will undermine the government as compelling interest in ensuring that all Americans have equal access to the public marketplace. And that's not all the Supreme Court did this week. They also struck down President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan. Today, justices blocked the administration's efforts to deliver up to $20,000 in loan relief to millions of borrowers struggling with debt. Big surprise here. The decision was 6-3 with Chief Justice John Roberts writing the conservative supermajority. Roberts says the Biden administration would need congressional approval to execute such a move, and the justices also took issue with the plan's wording, saying the forgiveness goes beyond a modification of the HEROES Act. Opponents to the plan, namely Republican-led states, argued that the Department of Education does not have the authority to forgive the loans. Meanwhile, Biden expected to announce new actions to protect student loan borrowers today. Now, to discuss these rulings, we bring in the producer of Trending Now. It's Laura Sebben. And Laura, we're going to get some lighter news. Lots of exciting movies coming out, some casting, something with Barbie. There was a house. There was a pink house.
Pink house, yeah.
We'll get to all that, but I want to get your opinion on this. I mean, 6-3, conservative supermajority. You're fluttering your eyes here. I mean, which one do you want to start with? I mean, they all kind of go hand in hand because it is a conservative majority ruling 6-3. The liberals. I mean, let's start with the affirmative action. This one's pretty interesting. I mean, they're all pretty interesting, but this one off the top.
I don't know. I say it all the time. Why do we treat the United States as the center of the universe, as the be-all, end-all that every other country wants to be like when they make clown decisions like this all the time? Like, historically and still currently, presently, people of color are disenfranchised in the United States. And race-based admissions was just a way to help them out and be like, listen, we know our systems have been against you guys for so long and have benefited rich white people specifically for hundreds of years, and this is a way for us to kind of double check our admissions and make sure that we're not glossing over viable candidates for our universities just because we're picking white people first. And the Supreme Court was like, bet. The whites are back. Like, it's so crazy to hear this stuff happening in 2023 because I'm like, what is going on? And
like rolling back of affirmative action, which is something that's been around. And, there's arguments that, that one of the Supreme Court judges was on the court because of affirmative action, right? When you look at a black Republican being on the conservative, majority here. But the one thing that this didn't address was it didn't address legacy admissions in which you get bonus points if your family member went to the school. And it also didn't address athletic admissions in which people who have athletic talent usually get above special treatment to also be accepted into these Ivy League schools. It really is one of those things. And when you look at them 6-3, you go to the next one. Rolling back LGBTQ rights. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised.
And we shouldn't.
It's a 6-3 supermajority. And again, I mean, this is a consequence of elections. Donald Trump appointed three of these. 3? 4? 3.
I don't know. All I know is I think that based on what I understand about our Supreme Court here in Canada and what the Supreme Court is for, it's supposed to be just that last level that, like, if the government in a democracy tries to do some crazy stuff, the Supreme Court is like, actually, the Supreme Court is basically the HR of country. So I don't understand why the government is allowed to elect the Supreme Court officials. Like, should that not be something that the public does? Because then obviously, as you're saying, 6-3, 6-3, 6-3, if you have a conservative leader in or a liberal leader in, they are going to stack the Supreme Court to help them pass the laws that they want to pass. And I don't understand how you're supposed to be like, actually, you're overstepping as a government when you have Supreme Court justices who work for the government. It doesn't make any sense.
And they're also lifetime appointments. So there's no term limits until they die, until they retire, until they don't have to leave. And you look at who has been appointed. A lot of those conservative, they're younger people,
strategy, right?
Ketanji Brown Jackson, also a younger judge, but like 6-3 majority, that 6-3 majority is going to be solid for a while. Clarence Thomas is the justice I couldn't remember. He's one of those guys who's probably the next to go, but he could still be on the court for another 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, and isn't there stuff that came out about him that he accepted, money
it's
from,
not just him. Justice Samuel Alito was also accused of taking lavish fishing trips to Alaska with people who have been before the court or work for law offices that go before the court. It is shady. Biden said it yesterday when he was asked in a press conference. They said, what's wrong? And he said, they're weird. Like there's something weird going on with the U.S. Supreme Court. And,
where are all these? Why are they just randomly yesterday and today being like, you know what, this thing done?
Well, because they're about to go to they're about to go in the summer. They're about to break for the summer, basically. And they usually put them out once a quarter, but they put these big ones out. You'll notice it's Friday afternoon.
Mm-hmm. So they don't have to talk about it.
But we've worked in news. Mm-hmm. We understand. If you want to hide something,
do it before a long weekend.
I would anticipate today, this afternoon, we're recording this early this afternoon. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling at 4:00 something is going to break.
Breaking. The Supreme Court has decided.
But it's not just U.S. I mean, that's where that is a typical spot. If you want to bury a headline, you don't want people to talk about what you're talking about. The Friday before a long weekend. Something's going down today. I'm calling it right now.
What do you think? Same-sex marriage repealed? Not allowed to happen?
But this is opening the listen to what they're saying. They're saying in the LGBTQ rights, they say that the First Amendment envisions the United States as a rich and complex place where all persons are free to think and speak as they wish.
But not gay people.
But are free to think and speak as they wish. No, they're saying opposition. If you're opposed to it, we're not going to stop you because you have the First Amendment. And this is just on a business decision saying, I don't want to create a website. I don't want your money. I don't want your money is what this website person, this Christian business owner is doing. Anyway, let's get to something lighter. Superman's got some new casting.
It looks the same as the old Superman. But it just looks like a younger version of Henry Cavill. Yeah. What's his name? David Cornsweet? Awful last name. So sorry, sir.
Sweat. Rachel Brosnahan, though.
Yeah, she's giving
Mrs.
vibes.
Maisel, right?
Yeah, Marvelous.
She was
Mrs.
in
Maisel.
House of Cards,
I have
right?
no idea. I literally only know her in the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. She's been around for a couple of things, but so how does this work with other DC? Is this a whole new story? Do we know? Is it going to link in with the Flash? DC is one of those ones that Marvel I try to stay involved with. No.
Well, I think what happened or what has been happening with DC for the last 2 decades is they keep trying to restart the franchise and then failing and then having to restart it while they have movies from the previous restart still coming out. So I think that's what's happening right now is that the Flash movie, and I think they have something called Blue Beetle coming out and maybe another Aquaman. They're all movies that were part of the last attempt to resurge the DC Studios universe. But then they brought in James Gunn, who previously worked with Marvel, to restart it again, essentially. So I feel like this Superman is going to be completely separate from the Flash movie we just saw and a couple more impending releases for DC.
Are there too many movies?
Obviously.
Well, how is anyone expected to watch all, there's so much content in the world.
Oh, I know.
How do you keep up? What do you prioritize? I'm pretty bad at watching shows I've seen 10 times before. Sitcoms I can throw on in the background.
My
watching habits are I can watch Seinfeld beginning to end once a year.
Yeah. Oh, I'm very similar with that.
I'll put Brooklyn right now I'm in the middle of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Mm-hmm. But I when I'm watching these shows episodes I've seen 4 times before, I always think man, should I be watching something different? Should I be watching something new? People always tell me I haven't seen Game of Thrones. I haven't seen Mad Men. I haven't seen, how do you balance your TV watch? How do you do it?
I just see what I like, and then I make it my whole personality while I'm watching it. I don't know. I see things that I like, and if I have the time, I will binge watch them. That's why usually I prefer to start things when they're new. Yeah. Because it is, unless you're saying it's something I've watched before that I really love and I know I can get through it again. Yeah. It is hard for me to start an old show that has a lot of seasons that I've never seen before and be interested in it. Yeah.
Start from the beginning, right? To start with a show that's got 6. If you're so far behind, it's forget it. I tried to watch Game of Thrones.
Okay, well Game of Thrones only has 10 episodes every season.
Yeah, so they're 90 minutes. And there's 12 seasons, isn't there? Is it that good of a show?
No, there's 7. I literally think it's some of the best TV that's ever.
Wow.
It was just so phenomenal and
I keep going to Game of Thrones. I didn't realize it was such a.
Oh, I love it. And then they just started House of the Dragon, which season 1 happened, and I was like, I don't know, can they replicate the Game of Thrones success? I thought they did.
When's season 2? That's another thing. Is these shows
They
are
take
like
really long. Yeah,
These shows are
probably
like
not till like 2024.
2 years apart. Succession, like every season. I did watch Succession.
Succession didn't take that long.
It took 2 years. I think it took 2 years between the last. Yeah. Oh yeah. I think the last season was pandemic, wasn't it?
No, I think that was like
don't
season 2. They had
Our
HBO.
Succession expert in the building.
I don't know.
Carly Conway
Anyways.
can let us know.
She probably.
Speaking of too much content, the Barbie movie. How excited are you? Are you going to be Oppenheimer, Barbie,
Yes.
Barbieheimer? Like, are you gonna be both in the
Trending
same
Now
day?
editor and I, Francesca, are actually getting a T-shirt. We're both ordering one, and it says Barbenheimer on it, and there's an image of Barbie like from behind watching like an atomic
Oh my
bomb.
god! Where'd you find this?
Redbubble, man.
God.
But no, I'm
What's
actually.
Redbubble? Is that a-
It's kind of like an Etsy.
Okay.
Like an Etsy
All right, okay,
website.
sure.
But I'm very excited for it. My friend and I are doing a double feature day.
Like same day.
Yeah.
You're gonna see both movies in the same day.
Obviously, Oppenheimer first. You have to be insane to watch Oppenheimer second. Like,
So why?
apparently, it's just much heavier in general. But apparently, like from reviews, like people have been leaving Oppenheimer like devastated. So I don't know why you would
So you
want
want to
like,
start sad and then
and then like get Barbie to bring you back up, sort of thing. But my friend, I found out recently that she's going to be in LA for opening weekend, so I have to wait.
what?
And I'm having a really hard time with it. But
Are you like
so no spoilers.
the
for
Manhattan?
anybody
I
who
mean,
knows
well, like
me.
no spoilers. Like the Manhattan Project is like a well-known
Well, more
historic
for like
event. That's what it's-
Barbie. Well, yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay,
a
yeah.
historic event, but it's like I think more the lead up to it, and also just to like see Christopher Nolan recreate an atomic bomb explosion. I can't wait to see how that comes to life.
Canada Day weekend. Tomorrow is Canada Day, which is always fun to say. Canada Day. What are you doing? What are you doing for the weekend?
We actually, on my dad's side of the family, have an annual party every year, and it's our turn to host it this year.
Oh.
So we're having my dad's side of the family over. Actually, Canada Day for me is not Canada Day. It's the Sebben picnic. I just refer to it as the Sebben picnic. I'm
Okay.
like,
All right.
so that has taken over my life. It's been happening since I was born.
No way.
Yeah, and it's actually really fun. We're a family who gets along, so it's nice to see each other and all hang out and just have a good time. I have a very
What are you?
very long playlist.
What are you preparing other than the playlist? What? Your mom is not gonna let you forgive that. Like,
Well, that's the thing.
you're not making anything, Laura, for the party.
Mom goes a little crazy when she hosts parties, and she likes everything to be perfect. And like even today, I was like, "Can I bring anything home?" She's like, "No, I'm picking everything up." I'm like, "Okay, I have to get some ice, but that's about it." And then I was like, "Oh, I could help clean the outside and make sure everything's clean." "Oh, that'll be done by the time you get home." I'm like, "Okay."
Perfect.
So I offer.
Yeah.
She just doesn't have a lot to give me.
It has been fairly recently where I've been shamed into like bringing things to family parties. Because now that I'm an adult, like there's an expectation that
so-
I'm like, even if it's like chips, like I usually bring a buffalo chicken dip. That's usually my go-to because I can make it off the top of my head, no problem. It always gets pretty good reviews when I bring it
Yeah,
up
why
places.
not? Stick with the classic.
But it's like, yeah, you get shamed into bringing things.
Well-
because like Louie, you're an adult. You can bring.
It's not a
food.
shame thing. It's just like the polite thing to do. My mom's always taught me
Not
that.
the way.
So
Not the way they tell me.
We a couple
to
weekends,
a family party.
No,
Come on.
yes, but a couple weeks I learned
Yeah.
that on my dad's side of the family, apparently that is not a thing that you do. Because a couple weeks ago, my cousins had a little party for their university graduation, and I was meeting my family there because I had plans before. So I stopped at the LCBO on my way, and I bought a bottle of wine because it was an open house, so it was just people filtering in for a few hours. And I walk up to my uncle and I'm like, "Here's the bottle of wine." And he's like, "What's this for?" I was like, "Just
It's a party.
just to serve your guests. Like it's an open house. I thought I would show up with a bottle of wine." "Well, you think I don't have wine to offer people?" I was like, "No, I just thought it was a nice thing to do." And then
Did it never get opened, or did you take it home?
I have no idea. But then my grandfather comes up to me a little later and he goes, "Oh, I hear you have to bring your own wine to the party." I was like, "What's happening?" I was just trying to be polite. So I will never be bringing anything to the Sebben
There you
family
go.
gatherings ever again. So
There you
off
go.
the hook.
Well, enjoy the Sebben picnic.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks.
All right, that's Lori Sebben. My thanks to her for joining me today. And my thanks to Greg O'Brien, the CHCH news director. My thanks to you for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm Louie Butko. Make sure to check out Trending Now every Monday to Friday, 7 p.m. I'll be back next week right here. From all of us here at CHCH, I'm Louie Butko. I just said that. Have a great weekend.